Hey there, Yurii here, and welcome to the Community ROI podcast. Here, senior community experts, founders, and C-level managers tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth about how a community impacts business growth. By listening to these conversations, you'll get actionable steps on how to connect community goals with business goals to skyrocket business growth while still bringing extreme value to community members. And my guest is amazing Tiffany Oda, a skilled community professional with experience in companies such as Salesforce, Venafi, and Asana, co-founder of the community OPServations community group of those who are interested in learning best practices for community operations, who also loves community and believes that no one is too senior to do a coffee run and that everyone has something they could learn. So welcome, Tiffany.
Thank you, Yuri. Thanks for that great introduction too.
It's just you, and I'm just happy to talk to you. So let's start with a basic question. So what's
Okay.
your definition of a community goal?
Oh gosh. I would say community can be a bunch of different things, right? So depending on what your company's use case is or why you are generating your community, what are your motivations and intentions for having the community? I think the goal would be different. But to define a community goal, I would just say, what are your goals for the community? What are you trying to achieve? But I think we're going to dig into the different types of goals and how to go about measuring them in this podcast. So, very vague answer, but I think we'll dive in.
So, okay, what is one goal of the community that you are working with at the moment or worked before that inspires you the most?
Um, well, I think there's kind of the separation between the community goals, which are, for example, the engagement scores, the CSAT scores of your community, the number of community activities, and those are all great. But in terms of kind of ROI, that cross-functional excellence, really showing the impact back to the business, I would say one of the goals that we are working on right now is related to retention, of showing the relationship between how customers and users stick around and are using the product related to their community activities. So if they're attending events and webinars, if they're in our forum, if they are signing up to become an ambassador, those are all, I think, indicators that would show, okay, I am invested in this, I'm looking to learn. And as a byproduct, being able to show that retention or their product adoption related to the community activity.
What metrics do you use and how exactly do you connect them with a retention goal?
Yeah, great question. So there's a couple things that we measure. The first one is just weekly active users essentially within the product. So if they're logging into the product, we measure, how many times they're logging in, what features they're using within the product, and being able to see that general just like product adoption level. Also looking to see if they're using some of our more advanced features or if they're using just kind of our basic features. Then we also have just retention stats of like, okay, so we have an account coming up and they are up for renewal. What are the percent chances or propensities for them to upgrade, downgrade, stay the same, or churn? And how many of those users are in the community and being active?
So I'm curious, are the most active users of the community are also the most active users of the product? Like it's kind of logically may sound that way, but is it that way?
Great question. The data is showing that yes, there are correlations between increased product usage, increased upgrades, decrease in churn with people who are more active in the community versus accounts that are not as active in the community or don't have community presence at all.
Got it. So what specific actions do you take to improve retention?
So one of the things that we're working on is just better targeted customer journeys. We have a bunch of different cohorts. There are the different types of users. There's industries, there's people who are like admins or team leads or just individual users, and making sure that they are enabled with content that's relevant for them. So what we're trying to do is just really create those curated experiences for each of those different personas within the community, making sure that the content is relevant for them and making sure that they feel supported and have, I guess, like that network or that community to go to of people who are in the same position as them or who relate to, whatever their situation is or whatever their role is. And I think that's one of the big things of like, this isn't a one-all catch-all community. There are a bunch of different, people in there, and you need to create unique experiences for them. Otherwise, if they don't find the content relevant, they're just not going to come back.
How do you know what's the relevant content for them?
We get a lot of feedback. So we do an annual survey where we essentially build our roadmap for the next year. So the survey is ongoing right now to find out feedback from ambassadors in the community on what, why they joined. We find out information about what they're looking for in the community, what their industry is, what they've enjoyed this year in terms of our content and our programming, and then what more they would like to see. I'm also, and I think this is obviously one of those very community-esque things, but regardless of how large your community gets, it's important to never lose that personal touch and building the rapport with the community members. And so I have an open scheduling link that I share with every person who joins the community. And I actually get a good amount of people who are scheduling these coffee chats with me. So just getting a constant pulse from people in the community on like, oh, I joined because of this, or this is how I'm using the community, or this is what I'm looking for, or this is the content that would be interesting to me or not interesting. I'm always listening, and we try and kind of build based off of that, build our programming based off of that. And then also we just do regular touch bases as well, of like regular pulse checks. We do polls in the community just to find out, what their focus is on, what their priorities on, where they're struggling. And again, we curate everything based off of where we're building things for the community members. We're not building things for the company, though, of course, it does help the company through that. But at the end of the day, we're listening, and then we're tailoring our roadmap based off of what we're hearing.
Like, the more people are joining the community, the more calls you receive on your calendar. And just a little bit of a personal question, because I'm doing pretty much the same thing. I'm talking to community members, I'm inviting them to have a link. So how long those calls are usually for you? And do you have a structure for these calls?
Yep, great question. So we use Clockwise, which is another, calendar scheduling tool. Also a big fan of Calendly as well. And they are 25-minute calls. I do the short meetings on Google Calendar. I think that's a really good one. It gives you a little buffer time if it goes over. And when you're in back-to-back meetings, if you end on time, it's a good time to go to the restroom in between meetings. So 25 minutes. I restrict the like meet and greet coffee chats to one per day. And then I also set focus time in my calendar. And Clockwise will essentially deduce when is the best time to not disrupt focus time during my day. And then obviously I set the working hours. I don't do any of these calls on Fridays either, because I think Fridays, no meeting day, it's kind of like a heads down day for me. And it generally works pretty well. I let them schedule as far out as they'd like to. And then obviously if they need to, they can always reschedule or, and then it sends reminders as well. So really good tool, would recommend it.
What about the structure? Like how do you structure this conversation with the people?
I start off by just introducing myself. And luckily, I've been at the company a short enough amount of time where I can say I joined in May. And, part of me learning about this community and adopting this program is getting to know our members. And so just wanted to have a casual chat with you to hear about your journey, why you joined the community, how you've been engaging, and then looking forward, what more would you like to see in the community that would continue to provide added value for you? And then it kind of just goes from there. And it's really interesting to hear their journeys and how they're using the product and how they're dabbling or engaging in the community. And then, um, most people are looking for more connections right now. And so I'm looking for, one-on-one matching. I'm looking at smaller group discussions, looking for ways that people can just start interacting and engaging with each other more, which is really cool. I think that's a really nice point in the community.
And I'm curious, how do you personally maintain all those connections? So you start a conversation with this call. What happens next?
Starting the conversation, you have the conversation. Number one also is always just documenting all of your notes. That way you can remember. I've also loved just asking people for a random or fun fact about them. And that also sparks a lot of just like, it's interesting to see who will ask me back. And then you have that like shared connection of, oh, this person makes shoes, or this person lived in a yurt for 3 months, or this person forages truffle mushrooms. It's just been very interesting to hear all of these really cool stories. And then that adds the personal touch for like, you hear like, oh, you know, Sharon does this. And then it's a really good way to kind of just like form a basic relationship with that person. And then also I just take notes. We, track all of the calls that we make so that we don't forget. And then I'll usually have some action items from these calls, whether it's like, oh, I'm not getting the community newsletter. Can I get added to it? Or, oh, I'm really interested in doing this. Or I'm really looking to learn more about this feature. And then I'll add those as items in my task list to always follow up with them on that. And then also one of the things is like a lot of our community members are willing and interested in participating more. So speaking, at community events or helping others who might need help with something. And so also just marking that in our tool to say like, hey, this person's open to speaking, or this person is new to the tool. And then being able to, better cohort that way because you have those filters and those tags in place.
I also noticed that the moment you have this click, the moment you build these personal relationships, you can so much easier ask the questions about the product, ask about the honest feedback, ask about like, please tell me like the reality, not just, hey guys, you're doing good works, but like exactly how do you feel? And I feel like that's exactly what also helps to grow. And adding up to that, so what are the additional goals that you are working on?
So we are actually in the middle of all of our planning for next year, but my goal really is to work on. Let me take a step back. I think when I joined, the program was kind of in a keep the lights on mode. And so a lot of the work that I've been doing this year has been kind of revitalizing the existing program. So updating our policies and guidelines, kind of creating a program mission and vision, of course, getting to know the community members, and then supporting the kind of run the business general activities that have already been ongoing. We have a bi-monthly community newsletter that gets sent out every 2 weeks. We have a bunch of different webinars and exclusive events that we do for our community members. So really busy in that regard. But for next year, our goals are really going to be around just like the healthy customer, the healthy community member. We really just want people to feel supported. And so for me, a goal is aside from kind of the weekly active users, the retention stats, we're also looking towards things like propensity of engaging within the community in different ways. We're also looking into things like, let me think. So weekly active users, we're looking into also like our event pipeline is really big. So people who are attending events are really highly qualified opportunities for engaging, whether it's they're brand new, whether they're affecting the pipeline, or whether they're existing customers and looking for additional product adoption or leveraging new features. So pipeline generated during community events, I think, is a big one. We're also just looking at like general community qualified leads and like how that's affecting our ARR as well. And then also we're looking at things like upgrade propensity. We're looking at like seat utilization. obviously retention rate, and also collaboration. So whether or not they're collaborating in the tool and tagging team members or using these different features. So there's a lot of kind of like product usage correlations to
Yeah.
that. And then we're also looking into things like support. So we have so many people in the forum. We have so many great product experts. So we're looking at things like answered questions a month. We're looking at case deflection. We're looking at average response rates, things like that. We're kind of tracking a lot, which is great. So I think what we're doing is we're really looking to kind of like segment all of those different goals based off of like the other teams that they're touching or what our company's directives and objectives are, and making sure that our community goals are all aligned to that. Um, and then one other thing is from a community perspective is I'm also really going to focus on active community members. We previously were kind of tracking this like total number. But from
Yeah.
that, how many of those are actually active in the community? How many of them are still using the tool? How many of them have moved companies and we like don't follow up with them at all? There's a lot of opportunity to re-engage those inactive community members, whether or not it's, hey, I didn't find anything interesting in the community. It wasn't for me. That goes back to those like curated experiences on like, how can we provide relevant content for you? Or maybe they've moved companies and then it's like, oh, well, hey, like, are you interested in also using this tool for at your new company? Is it helpful for you? Like, you were clearly like a champion of it at your old company. Like, what's stopping you from using it at your new company? Um, just maintaining those relationships. So I think active ambassadors and active community members is going to be really important next year as well.
Who do you call who is an active community member? Like, what are the minimum requirements for that?
We're actually working on defining that right now. So no set answer, but it's going to be something along the lines of, our community has a lot of different ways to engage. We have, like the events, we have the forum, we have a Slack workspace, we have an Asana workspace. So it's going to be a culmination of, we understand you're not going to be in every single resource that we have, but just like, you're engaged in some way. Um, we're still trying to figure out what a good timeline is and the cadence and, what kind of like the activity threshold is.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of the direction we're headed.
When I hear words like pipeline or qualified leads, I totally hear the sales team somewhere around. And you were also talking about the product and support. So please tell me, what teams do you mostly work with while building a community, and how does a community impact them?
We are working, it's really cool because, and for those of you who might know Holly Firestone, she has this amazing slide that shows community as the center of excellence across the organization. And I really do feel like our community team and our community work very cross-functionally. So when you just ask like, what's one team that you work with? I'm like, oh, I don't know if there's like one set answer. So we're working with like our product team. We partner on like we provide roadmap preview webinars for our ambassadors. We have product feature deep dives. We do a lot of also just like general marketing use case webinars working with our marketing team. And so really kind of making sure that we are, sorry if you can hear the alarms outside. But we're really making sure that we have constant content and relevant things going on, and that our community is staying updated on the latest and greatest with the product. So product marketing, we're also working with our customer success teams, just to make sure that they understand how to talk about the community. We have slide templates, we have talking tracks for them, and making sure that they are also involved in the community so that they, a lot of their customers are in there, and making sure that they understand like, oh, hey, you have this account that just had a new person join the community. Maybe like that's a good indicator. Maybe also reach out to them to see if there's any other resources we can provide. Lots of touch points with customer success. They're a great partner. We are also working with support on making sure that we have the data available. Obviously case deflection is huge for them as well. getting rid of that backlog, making sure that the community is supported, both like if they're asking questions in the community, that they're getting the answers that they need. And then also if there's emailing support, maybe check out the community for some resources that already exist. And then from kind of going back to the like the sales that you mentioned earlier, we're also very involved with our sales team. We found a really big win last year when we're doing our in-person community events. I in previous companies we've heard like, oh, we don't want sales there because we want them to just be able to network and connect with each other. And then this year we actually discovered that there is a preference to having a salesperson present so that they can talk, if a attendee has a question about their account or they learn about a new feature in the event and want to upgrade their workspace. So having kind of that sales team buy-in as well and having them be able to support our community in that way has been really impactful, such that we're actually making sure that for future community events, we do have, a salesperson present to help support the people who are there. And then lastly, I would say going back to product is, there's a lot of product feedback, product ideas being submitted in the community. And so making sure that our product team has eyes on that, including it in their roadmap prioritization and being able to see, okay, these are the accounts that are asking for these features. Like that's a really big, impactful group of customers that maybe we should bump this up on the roadmap. And so really closely touching like everyone in the company.
Yeah, and it sounds also like a lot of involvement, for people from different teams and different departments. But I'm curious, how do you encourage people from other teams to work with the community without not just adding more work on their plates?
Yeah, I think a lot of this groundwork and kind of building the reputation of the community internally was done before me. So shout out to Josh Circle for leading that initiative. Um, However, I do think that having these regular conversations with the cross-functional stakeholders, it's not a one-way street. So like when marketing comes in, they're like, oh, we need to promote this webinar, we track it, and like the source registrations or the source of the registrations for these webinars, oftentimes community is one of the main factors of what drives the registrations for these. So they get increased registrations, they get increased attendance because they're engaging with the community. Or for example, with like product teams, they're looking for product adoption for new features. They're looking for people to be using these things. They're hoping that people understand how to use them and are taking advantage of these features. And so being able to amplify the use cases, how to do it from an instructional point of view, and best practices, that at the end of the day affects the product team in a beneficial way. And so it is helpful for them to participate in our webinars and hear from the community on like, oh, but this button didn't make sense to go there, or oh yeah, I encountered this issue, so that they can work on reiterating the product and making it even better. And then obviously like support is an easy one of like, oh, you're helping us with our caseload and our backlog. And then even sales, they appreciate having these community qualified leads and having these already built relationships and trust with our users before they even touch base with them. So I think it's been made pretty clear that the community, yes, it does maybe take some work from them, but at the end of the day, it's also helping their goals. It's helping make their jobs easier. And so now we're in the phase of like, we have a bunch of different people coming to the community, and it's like, okay, well, we need to prioritize from the community's perspective and make sure that, where we can support it, which is a really good problem to have.
Yeah, sometimes I hear from some community managers that I'm protecting community from our sales team, or I'm protecting community from our marketing team, and like even though like it sounds a little bit of weird because you don't really have to protect, you have to collaborate, but I totally get it because sometimes people think that, oh, I will just go and like throw this webinar promotion, or I will just go and throw this for people to know, or oh, I will just go and sell everyone because they need to buy the product, we are so amazing. So do you have some kind of a guidelines for other team members on how to participate in the community?
Yeah, great question. And to your point, I have been that person who says we need to protect the community from the sales team. But I do think there's like terms of engagement. There's ways to engage that are beneficial. So, for example, if someone joins the community, I block them from instantly getting a sales email or sales outreach. Like when someone joins the community, they're not immediately like put into Salesforce for reach out. So I do think it is still important to protect the community. And if like people are asking for case studies or testimonials or references, like it needs to be done thoughtfully so you're not just spamming your community members. So it's important to do some monitoring and vetting and protecting for the community members. But I do think, to your point, having kind of an internal terms of engagement or internal enablement for people on how to engage with the community, what's appropriate, what's not, that's really important. So that's actually another thing that is in progress right now is we're creating a whole set of like internal enablement assets for all the different teams on like, hey, you have this person who's brand new. Here's some resources. Here's like ways that you can talk about the community with them. We have documentation on like, hey, if you're in the forum, this is how you can engage with the community members, do's and don'ts. We are trying to be more also just, I guess, like public internally in sharing updates on different community activities, programs, et cetera, events going on so that people have kind of a at any time toolkit that they can then use to go and talk with people. And then we just like make sure that if anybody is engaging with the community, that we, let them know do's and don'ts and what it's for and what it's not for. So luckily, it's been pretty good. I don't think anybody's really overstepped their bounds so far. And then it's also from an operational perspective, making sure that the people who are in the different tools have visibility to the data that's relevant for them, which is why I mentioned when someone joins the community, they're not immediately put into Salesforce as a lead. So, we have our community integrated with Salesforce, but we make sure that that field is not visible, right? And so, yeah, I think it's been good. There hasn't been any, knock on wood, anyone who's like, outrageously breaking rules or anything out there.
It also sounds like community members are like on the top of the funnel for a sales team. So basically, you help them to get ready, and then the terms that you've mentioned, community qualified leads. So at some point, you just tell them like, "Hey, these people are ready. Go talk to them." Am I understanding it correctly?
I would say there's never like a set point where we're like, okay, go talk to these people. They've been in the community and they've attended events. Because we also have a lot of existing users and existing customers who are engaging. I think it's more just having a holistic view of our relationship with our customers. And so they have visibility into when, a new user from their account joins the community. They have visibility when they're registering for events or when someone signs up to become an Asana ambassador. So it's more just getting that like full understanding of how a customer or prospect is engaging with us, but not like we are not just filling a funnel. So in that, it's also still protecting the community where, it's community in general, not just my community, but community in general. It's so cool because it touches the customer at every part of their user journey and of their life cycle from just doing research and looking into a company to onboarding to becoming an expert to new features and ongoing things. So I think in that, yeah, it's really cool.
How do you talk about community wins internally? I mean, how do you bring visibility to the overall community impact on business?
Can you clarify that question a little bit?
Sometimes it's hard to talk about community wins, community ROI, something that you got because of like amount. I mean, like how to distinguish like vanity metrics and something that really impacts business. Like how do you communicate to management, to CEO? How do you show how community impacts overall business goals?
Um, yeah, so we do monthly status updates, and it's a really good way to just get visibility to some of those metrics and wins. We also do like comparisons of like, for example, community events versus marketing events versus like huge tentpole events. And you can see the correlation or the impact of the community events on our business objectives and our goals. So like community is always right there listed amongst like any kind of initiatives that are going on. We also have just like huge ambassador presence across the org, from signing up to be speakers to the product usage. And so ambassadors are actually mentioned a lot in our internal comms, not only with community, but other teams as well, because how involved they are. And so I think some of the work I don't even need to do. Some of them, like some of the stats and reporting to business and leadership, other teams are doing because the community involvement. So again, it's like having that relationship. When product marketing or the marketing team does a webinar, they're like, oh yeah, 20% of the registrations were actually sourced from the community, which is, yeah, very cool. Or like we held conferences and we had ambassadors who were speakers, and those sessions had really great CSAT scores. Or hey, we did a beta testing for a new program, and we had 400 ambassadors sign up for it and complete it. Like, so I think there's different ways to do it, but the community also speaks for itself and how engaged they are with us, which is amazing. Um, and then I would also say with community, and you mentioned this a little bit earlier, some of it is qualitative and not all of it is quantitative. And so when we receive any feedback or, oh, like like I did this amazing thing because I learned it in the community, or I love this program so much, or whatever, I will screenshot that and share it in our we have like a random channel internally. We also have like a customer love channel, so I'll share it in there. And we have leadership in there. And so we've actually had responses from our C-suite team that see it and they're like, wow, this is really cool. How do we even further amplify it? So really, really cool to see. But yeah, I would say it's a work in progress to just like, because we're tracking so much, being able to share it in a way that people are reading it. Otherwise, you send out a status update, no one reads it. So it's like, how do you get it out there? So it's like bite-sized chunks, making sure that the appropriate teams know what's relevant for them. And then like sharing really good feels, to a wider audience. So they're like, oh, that's really cool. Like, how do I get in on that?
And as much as I love hearing that, I totally know that community is not always a bright side. There is also a dark side. So, how do you talk about the challenges you face in the community internally?
I would say one thing right now is, because we are a global community, there are a lot of different needs based off of the different regions. And we are such a small team, it's really hard to support each of those regions. And one of the biggest challenges is really just like the bandwidth and how many other priorities we have to do. So just making it very clear what our roadmap is, what we can do and what we cannot do based off of our given resources, is really important. So I think that just being very transparent of like, hey, we don't have the capacity to do this right now, or we can't support this event in this region because we don't have boots on the ground there, or just being, I guess, like very real. And also I think if anyone knows me, they know I love a good roadmap. And so being very clear about like, this is what our priorities are, this is what our roadmap looks like. If you want something added to this, we need to talk about what's coming off or what gets pushed out. So that I think is the current like dark side of community that I'm facing right now. We also have like, I would say this isn't a dark thing. I think it's just an opportunity because I think with community, and I touched upon this a little bit earlier, but when I feel like when people first join communities, they're looking for support, they're looking for resources. And so far, I feel like a lot of our community is like asking questions, getting answers, asking questions, getting answers. But there's so much more opportunity for those in-depth thought leadership conversations, those nitty-gritty struggles of being in the tool every day and how they've overcome those challenges. And so I would say though it's not a dark moment or a dark thing in community, I think it's an opportunity to really bring people out of their shells, bring people out of that like transactional relationship and start building that community aspect of where just chatting with each other, where sharing stories with each other. That's more than just like, support, asking the question, getting the answer.
It's all about sources, it's all about time. And even now, I wish to have the sky as a limit, but time is a limit. So the final question, what is one thing to do right away for someone who's struggling with identifying their community ROI?
Yeah, it's a great question. Take a step back and look at what the company's priorities are. Because, like we've talked about, community can touch so many different things. There's so many things going on, and we are a small team, slash, most likely, probably one person. So, taking a step back and figuring out, okay, from a company perspective, what are our immediate goals? And then how does community fit into that? And how can we measure it? I think a big part of the measuring is what data you have available and how you can put the data together in a consumable format that's not only just showing, you can have all these pretty graphs and charts, but so what? Like, what does that data mean? And how can you derive, like either action items, trends, et cetera, from that data? And how do you share that data in a way that's meaningful to people? So start from the top, think about the company's objectives and how community fits into that, and then think about how to share and what to share. And that's kind of like I would say, 101 answer for that.
Last but not least, name 2 people I should reach out to and talk about community ROI.
I don't know who you've talked to already. So maybe I'm going to think on that one and I'll follow up with you offline.
Okay. But usually it's not about who already you've been, but it's more about who you would like to learn yourself. So, but yeah, it's totally good. Okay. And what is the best way to connect with you?
You can connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm Tiffany Oda, or it's Tiff E Oda. Or you can email the comopsgal@gmail.com.
Got it, Tiffany. Thank you so much for this super valuable conversation and for sharing your amazing experience so openly.
Thank you, Yurii. It's been so nice catching up with you and getting to chat about this.
Totally. Very much likewise. And yeah, see you in the community world. And thank you so much for listening. If you have any questions about how the community can help you reach and overcome your business goals faster, let's connect on LinkedIn and talk about it. That's it. We're done. See you in the next episode.